All right, welcome to it. Daniel was crazy busy today, so didn't have time to make a video early and then edit it, then get it up in time to process before 9 p.m. So F it, we're doing it live, Bill O'Reilly style. It's Uninterrupted, where I did watch the CBC, and there will be a worst of the CBC. I'm just wondering, do we lead off with my most ranty rant, or do we start with the biggest story, which I think it is? I mean, Operation Rolling Thunder happening this weekend. We got the freedom protest coming back, and we're going to do it. Good news is, like, doing this live again, I can re-interact with the chats. So, guys, if you want to just insult me in the chats, I will respond. And I will respond to all your questions, but only the most ridiculous, none of the serious ones. For example, sweet, I assume Jordan wants to lick me because I am sweet. Okay, so that's... Stop grooming me. I think we know how this show's going to go, but it's probably going to go over half an hour. So that's your gift. All right. Operation Rolling Thunder is coming into Ottawa, and the Ottawa police are insane, and the Ottawa establishment is insane, and they are lying, and it is ridiculous, and it needs to be called out, like in clappy hand emojis, but in ethnic clappy hands emojis, because white clappy hands are bad ones. So it needs to be called out. There you go. Now you have to listen. Okay. Trudeau needs to be removed personally. I will do it. I will pick him up and move him. Don't worry, David. I will pick him up and remove him from the premises. I will then put him in a kindergarten where he belongs. There you go. I beat you to it. I'm the greatest. All hail me. So Operation Rolling Thunder's come in. My favorite thing is I saw the Ottawa Citizen. They did a whole thing of, well, it turns out the people involved in Operation Rolling Thunder were involved in the Freedom Convoy. They came to the Freedom Convoy. Yeah, no duh. No duh, you idiots. Of course they did. The people who wanted a celebration of freedom believed that the Freedom Convoy was good. Mark wants a present. What is it, socialism, where you just want free handouts? Unspeakable. Unspeakable. And yes, spelling is now haram, because I've been told spelling is racist. So anyone who expects me to know the difference between the two is a racist and will be deported. Will be deported. You'll be forced to go to Florida, okay? The evil land of Florida, where everyone is dead of COVID and no one's allowed to have sex with your kids. I know. Okay. One of those days. So the Rolling Thunder is coming in, and they're like, oh my God, it's involved with the Freedom Convoy. How the organizers supported the Freedom Convoy. We've cracked it, guys. The crack reporters at the mainstream media have figured out that the supporters of the Freedom Convoy also, or the people involved in Rolling Thunder, also support the Freedom Convoy. Guys, give them $1 billion. No way, $2 billion. I know the CBC gets $1 billion, but give the Ottawa Citizen, that's worth at least $250 million for figuring that one out. Let's throw some money at Global News. Guys, let's get Evan Solomon needs a pacifier, a golden one. So that's what, that's like, it's easily $100K, like with diamonds, like grills, like how NFL football players have grills. We need a big swagged out pacifier for Evan Solomon and everyone at CTV. You know what? We need one for, guys, increase the budget. What we need is we need, let's just be safe and say $400 million to buy swaggy pacifiers for everyone at CTV News, because Operation Rolling Thunder is coming in. And then we also need diapers, but like silk satin diapers, like the Egyptian thread diapers, right? So $500 million. Guys, don't worry, the budget will balance itself. But you have this insane thing where they're talking about rolling freedom coming in, and they've created like vehicle exclusion zones. Like, this is the convoy was totally peaceful. And had they just been like, you know what, the convoy is peaceful. Here is, here's, the space. We'll just let you go. We'll be here to make sure no one gets hurt. Have a police presence, but don't crack down, and make sure the bikers don't like yell at some lady in a mask. But this whole nonsense of like, oh, we're going to block off areas that can go. Like, they're not just going to not come now. Right now, they're going to be rolling through the downtown. It's going to be an absolute clusterfuck. So that's what you're creating. But surprise, surprise, they actually want to create this. They want to create an absolute mess. And that way, when it goes tits up, they can blame The people at Operation were like, oh no, it was a horrible for the city. Yeah, if you would just let them ride through fucking Wellington and yell at the politicians, but no, we have to protect the politicians and unleash them on the people. Okay, I'll read this. Pretend this is a super chat. Pretending. Will Canada vote for our dear leader, Captain Blackface? I added the captain because respect. Person with hair, Justin Pierre, James Trudeau, fourth time. Like some of them will. There's some people are just nuts and will like always vote liberal. There's the TrueAnon crowd out there. There's people out there on the internet who thinks he does nothing wrong and just believe everything the mainstream media tells them. So yeah, some people will vote for him. I do not think he wins the 2025 election. I think well, it depends. If it's Patrick Brown, I think he has the best chance against Patrick Brown. I don't think he could beat, like there might be a scenario we can beat Leslie Lewis if she absolutely messes up, because the media will go insane, like calling her alt-right, Christian fundamentalist, blah, 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 blah. And, they're going to take away your abortions, which is a great wedge issue. But I don't think he has a snowball's chance in hell in beating Poilievre. I think Poilievre, if he is a conservative candidate, I do think he wins. I think he wins a majority because, I think you guys have heard my theory on if you just stay strong and you export Canadian conservative values in a confident way and you make the case for conservatism, he will win. So I think if it's Poilievre, I do think Poilievre, as it stands now, has a very good chance. But again, we're 3 years out. After you took over the CBC, did you send Rosemary Barding a parting gift? No, I have her locked up in my basement, where it's a re-education camp. Don't worry, it's not like a jail. I'm just re-educating her against her will, which I've learned there's nothing wrong. Thank you, Australia. The assault bouncy castles, yes, horrific. Okay. It looks like nothing else with a question mark. I like this one. Here's a future article. Leslie Lewis is a blackface of white supremacy. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this article is 95% accurate, or this sentence is 95% overlay with an article that comes out in the next couple years. But if she doesn't win the leadership, it might not happen. All right, so you have Rolling Thunder. And what drives me crazy is, yes, the exclusionary zones. So vehicles can't go in certain places. So they're protecting the politicians because it's a total show of force, right? And they're doing it at the expense of the city, but they're doing it for the will of the politicians so they can then exercise political power. Again, they're making insane threats. This is democracy. And they're saying the organizers will be held accountable for their actions and what they post before, during, and after. And they're talking about online hate crime investigations. So like, if Rolling Thunder's in there, they're going to be monitoring the internet for mean comments. And what, pressing charges? This is exactly what we say as conservatives, or as the right, or just non-leftist lunatics. This is exactly what we say when we say that, this is, free speech is under attack. And it's a leftist attack on free speech. We mean this. We mean there's a protest, there's a right-wing protest, and the police have dedicated an entire battalion to monitoring comments on the internet and charging people for them. None of this was done during Black Lives Matter riots. And again, a thing I brought up, I brought up in space yesterday. I didn't bring it up on the video, but you might not remember when George Floyd died, there was worldwide riots, and there were some riots, pro-Black Lives Matter riots in Montreal, Canada. And in honor of George Floyd, some leftists went into a synagogue in Montreal, tore up the Torahs, and stuffed them into the toilet. Was there any no hate crime? So real life hate crime, but there was no online hate crime monitoring where anyone in Black Lives Matter saying kill all the white people. There was no monitoring of that, as there should be. If there's a big Black Lives Matter rally planned for May, I don't want the Canadian police searching online for, black people saying things that I don't like in order to charge them. Right? I think we can all agree that's not the path we want to go down. I don't want to see people afraid to post things on the internet. Let them post things, let me screenshot it, and then call them idiots or racist if they do. That's the world I want to live in. All's fair and fair. But the real, annoying thing is they are still calling the the protest in Ottawa, in occupation, and they're calling it illegal. This is fake news. So in the big threat and fear of misinformation, you have this thing where in February, I was there on the ground, I was covering it, I spoke to the lawyers who did it. In the hearing, the Freedom Convoy lawyers won the hearing, the one where they got the injunction against air horn honking. The judge ruled that the truckers in Ottawa had a legal right to be there and park there. It was part of their second Charter 2B rights of freedom of expression, that the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa fell under charter rights. Now, blocking borders was a different thing. It wasn't really affiliated. Again, it was all very independent. But in Ottawa, the trucks parking in Ottawa, a judge ruled that to be legal. And we're just pretending that it was illegal. This is the type of stuff where it's like you can't cede anything to the left. They're not reasonable actors. The left cannot exist in the same world as us when they do things like this, when they objectively lie. Listen, if you want to make arguments against the Freedom Convoy, you can say, okay, it was very loud and it was disrespectful, and my friend was wearing a mask and and she got yelled at outside. Okay, you want to tell me that, but don't tell me it was an illegal occupation, because it wasn't. And do you guys remember the maddening thing was, as soon as the war in Ukraine started, after this, it was like, this is what real freedom fighters look like. Real freedom fighters fight against Vladimir Putin. And I made the point that, of course, and no one in the Freedom Convoy, or 99% of the people in the Freedom Convoy, will admit that they in Ottawa did not have it as bad as citizens in the Ukraine facing Russian artillery. It is worse to be bombed by the Russians than it was to be in Canada from 2020 onwards. That being said, though, it's not, we have significantly less freedoms in Canada today in 2022 than we did in 2019. That's an objective fact. And we were protesting to make sure that Canada doesn't turn into Russia, because Russia is an authoritarian regime. We protest as our democratic regime gets more authoritarian to prevent it from becoming authoritarian. And I love the other thing, because the inverse was obviously true as well, right? If those are the real freedom fighters, if the Ukrainians are the real freedom fighters, which, yeah, the Ukrainians taking up arms to defend their country are freedom fighters. It is heroic. But if those are real freedom fighters, then what the Russians are doing is a real occupation. So don't sully, what the Ukrainians are going through by calling the Freedom Convoy an occupation when it wasn't an occupation, when actual Ukrainians are being occupied by Russia. And this is the type of stuff we have to do to fight back, because they're just absolute liars. Absolute liars. Good points. David, you get crime rate went down. Homeless were doing great. Crime went down. I don't know what this comment is with essential oils. I just assume it was ultimately sarcastic. Pretty great. Yeah, Natasha, thank you. Not an illegal occupation. No, it was ruled legal. Ruled legal in a court of law. And don't a court of law apply. Okay. So that's the type of thing that was just, it really grinds my gears when they did that. They just can't stop lying. The other funny thing is the anti-hate network. Oh, the anti-hate network got exposed in a committee hearing by the Conservatives who did that. By the way, please like and share the video. It really helps out. If you can get more reactions, it helps everything. So if you push buttons, then we'll save the country and make Bernie Farber cry. So if you do not like the video, the anti-hate network will grow into like one of those like Voltron robots. Like they'll merge with the SPLC and I don't know, their friends at like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, and like the UN will be the head, and there'll be a giant leftist globalist robot storming down the streets. And you don't want that, so just like and share the video, or else that will happen. Mark my words. I stake my life on it and the life of my firstborn llama. Okay. All right. Since we're going on here, the anti-hate network. So the Canadian Hate Network, which is what their real name is, I've discovered it, is a hateful organization who believe that women deserve their own spaces. So you could say, depending on your thing, I know they might not like. They call themselves radical feminists. So TERFs. By the way, TERF lives matter, guys. All the TERFs in the chat. Tell a TERF you appreciate them. Hug a TERF day. With their permission. They're radical feminists, so you might want to ask permission. But give a TERF a high five day. That's what I've declared. Great community, the TERFs. Daniel supports you. The official sponsor of Uninterrupted is TERFs. TERFs, making the TQ plus cry since 1995 or whatever. So the Anti-Hate Network is a organization, the Canadian Hate Network, anti-silent. The Canadian Hate Network is an organization run by a bunch of leftists, let's be honest. And the way the Canadian Anti-Hate Network operates is they are a arm of the government and the Liberal Party, and more specifically, to be a false independent organization to push the Liberal agenda. So the way they work is they get tons of government funding to be an independent organization. And then them as an independent human rights organization, they make findings that tell us that the internet needs more censorship, right? There's a big problem with internet hate speech. We need Bill C-11. We need Bill C-36. So organizations like the Canadian Hate Network are very important in pushing through all the anti-liberal, really, right? Because none of the stuff the liberals propose are actually philosophically liberal. None of what they do is designed to reduce hate. It's all meant to stoke hate against the right groups and push political agendas. So as you see, and they got kind of exposed in committee hearing. So one, there's actually evidence if you look at the Anti-Hate Network, the Anti-Hate Network openly cooperates with Antifa organizations. They openly do. And at committee today, they admitted that they see themselves as anti-fascist and they monitor right-wing hate. They don't look at left-wing hate organizations. They openly said this. I don't know why they would say this. I mean, it is objectively true, so I guess they didn't lie. But again, there's no consequences to lying if you're a major left-wing organization in Canada. So I don't know why they didn't. Because it's not like this is an organization that doesn't lie. They lie consistently. Lie consistently about women's organizations. That's why I've got shout out. Thank you. Can't shave every day. Now it's my 9:15 shadow. So what they do, and the function of the Anti-Hate Network, as we understand it, the Anti-Hate Network, its job is to say the things the liberals want to say about social issues so the liberals can push the policies they want to push regardless. So the Islamophobia motion, the Anti-Hate Network is there to say Islamophobia is the most evil thing in the world, right? Internet censorship, they're there to say, well, the internet's too crazy. We can't have freedom because freedom hurts the BIPOCs, right? We want to push anti-conversion therapy, right? But by conversion therapy, you want conversion therapy to mean that if you have a 3-year-old son in Canada and he comes up and says, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm a girl," and you take him to a psychiatrist to help him with these thoughts, that's conversion therapy. You must immediately chop his penis off. The Anti-Hate Network is there to call you transphobic and advocate that you get your children taken away from you if you do not want to chop their genitals off immediately. This is the job of the Anti-Hate Network, is they are there to push radical leftist agendas. So they got exposed pretty much at committee, but it's not going to matter, right? They still do that. And I was in a great Twitter space the other day run by Canadian sex-based women rights organization, SUBAR. I will say I like the TERFs. They're not great at their acronyms. Canadian Women's Sex-Based Rights. Something. The Anti-Hate Network hates them. So the ADL is what you're trying to say. No, they're not so much the ADL. The ADL's Canadian equivalent would be, no, it's CEJA. CEJA is more Jewish. The ADL a bunch of morons. They're more the SPLC. Their Canadian equivalent is the Southern Poverty Law Center, would be what they model themselves off of. The ADL are just a bunch of moronic pussies. Is how I describe the ADL. They're less nefarious. They're more just, okay, like, what are you doing? Yeah, they're being counterproductive. I'll grant you that. So, yeah, Mark's right. Okay, like the fake Miami flyer. Yeah, this is one of the time of things. So the ADL, the SPLC ADL, Canadian Hate Network, run by Bernie Farber. And what Mark is referring to there is Farber had a flyer that was from actually Miami that he claimed was sent. It was an anti-Semitic flyer, basically. Jews control the world. It was crumpled up. It's the exact same flyer that some lunatic had put out in Florida weeks ago, and he pretended that it was put up by the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, and he didn't verify this. It was objectively fake news, but he kept with the narrative anyway, and then it was debunked, Jonathan Kay, and then he said, okay, it was wrong. But this is the same man who will go on and 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 on about the dangers of misinformation. So you can just see the absolute impunity in which leftists, like the Canadian Hate Network, can lie. And they lie about women, and they back the Jessica Yaniv and the Morgan Auger and those psychopaths when they colluded. I mean, Canada is a country. I'm not sure. You guys let me know if you remember this story. I think it was 2018. Might have been 2019. I'm pretty confident it was a 2018 story, where there was a rape crisis center in Vancouver that was vandalized. And every rape crisis center in Vancouver had capitulated to the radical trans activists, and it opened up a space for women who'd be sexually abused by men to be open to people with penises. And one rape crisis center said, you know what, we're going to keep a space for women. This is a battered women's shelter. There are many other places that deal with trans people. There is now no more places that are just for women who have experienced sexual assault at the hands of men. This will not be allowing Jessica Yaniv into our site. This is just for women. They were very far left. They're not there. They weren't there talking about the carbon tax. Very far left people, or solidly left. And Morgan Auger, who NDP and good friends with Michelle Rempel, who, by the way, Michelle Rempel is sorry that she's white, and she did apologize, so don't worry. She did say she's sorry for that. But Michelle Rempel's friend, Morgan Auger, he went around and he was bullying this rape crisis center and berating it to the point where it was vandalized by a bunch of trans rights activists. And what they did is they vandalized a rape crisis center and left rape and death threats against a center for women who've experienced sexual assaults. Think of the depravity and the absolute ideological possession one would have to be under to think you are a human rights activist and to look at a bunch of raped women who do not want to be in the same spot as a man because they have just experienced sexual assault and then threaten to rape and kill them for this belief. How demented do you have to be? And then Morgan Auger got on the internet and publicly declared that if they bow the knee to him, he will stop, and he will stop this. Basically admitted that the rioters, and the vandals had, were following him, and he could call them off at any point, right? This is the type of stuff they're trying to get Trump on, even though Trump never did this type of thing on January 6th. But Auger, he came clear out and said it. That's what he did. He and him. His pronouns are he and him. I don't give him the thing. Mark. He is laughing at the Rempel comment, and thank you. It meant to be. Yeah. So that is the state of these people, and the Anti-Hate Network didn't say diddly squat about that, and instead attacked the women who defended this rape crisis center. That is the Anti-Hate Network. So that's why it's the Canadian Hate Network. It is a network full of hate. And now, it's the worst of the CBC for April 27th. A show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. Yes, I forgot what day it is. It's been a long one. Okay, so today, lead story on, I guess, last night's The National. Remember, like, share the video, blah, 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 blah. Is, guys, I know you've been worried about racism, but it's over. Racism is over. It's over. It's done. We fixed it. Yay. Because Ryerson University is no more. It is now Toronto Metropolitan University. Something stupid. Okay, so guys, it is over. Done. No more racism. We tore down Egerton Ryerton's statue. It's done. The university's been renamed. And the CBC's covering this. And this is what drives me nuts. Like, if you guys have been here for, if you've been following for a while, I hate this bullshit. I hate historical revisionism. I hate this nonsense. I hate this. I hate this with a burning passion of 1,000 suns. Because how many Indigenous lives were saved by tearing down the Ryerson statue? This is number one. Like, okay, the first thing is the narrative against Edgerton Ryerson is completely fabricated bullshit, and it's an assault to the man's legacy, and it's disgusting. And for Ryerson's family, we should all be ashamed. But let's say even the narrative on Ryerson was true, and he did design the, residential schools. Like, okay, is there an Indigenous person out there in Canada who faces, let's say, discrimination, has problems? If I had a system that could clean the drinking water, but it required pictures of Egerton Ryerson and his name to be everywhere, do you think they'd take it? I think they would. I think they're people, and I think they're rather reasonable. So they tore down the statue, and the CBC is going on about how good this is. It's a center for progress. There's other universities like Dalhousie, which is the guy who founded Dalhousie back in an age where everyone had slaves, didn't have problem with slaves. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, the only Canadian founder who's good on the slavery question is John Graves Simcoe, the first Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, which is now Ontario, and the first Mayor of Toronto. Like, Upper Canada is founded in 1792. The first major legislative act in Ontario is 1793, the Act Against Slavery, which is the first major legislative attempt in the Western world, in the entire world, at the abolition of slavery. That's a pretty good thing for us, right? But that was the first. So if this is the standard, like John Graves Simcoe, and like the other thing that drives me crazy, Daniel ran for a bit. What drives me absolutely up a fucking wall is with all these leftists saying, oh, the historical slavery in Canada, this name in the house, bad names. Why do none of them know who John Graves Simcoe is? Really? Why does no one in this country so obsessed over the historical sins of racism? Why do none of them know that the first major legislative attempt at the abolition of slavery came into this country, in this province, by John Graves Simcoe? Why? It pisses me off. Honestly, it pisses me off. Like, if you're looking for a more correct name from our past, why can't we rename Ryerson University Simcoe? John Graves Simcoe. And cut the fact, you know what? This is the first major legislative attempt at the abolition of slavery. And it was the first year that our friggin' country or province existed. I think that's pretty good. I think it's good that the first thing that Ontario tried to do when it became an official entity was try and ban slavery. Literally first thing. But no, we can't talk about that. Instead of we're just complaining about stuff. So Egerton Ryerson, who did not design he was an educator, and he was like one of the smartest guys in Canada at the time. So he was like Minister of Education in this, at the time he was there. And because Canada's a small place, he rose to the top, and he designed textbooks, which back in the day was pretty hard. So he was the one who wrote out the lesson plans, and he did friggin' math and science. And he wrote it at a grade school level and a middle school level and a high school level. And he basically created the curriculum, used his knowledge to create curriculum and write down knowledge so that kids could learn it. What the residential schools did is it took this knowledge for their math class. Yes, the residential schools had abuse in them. Some of them were better than others. Some of them were absolute horrific human rights abuses. I'm not going to deny this. But at the residential schools, there was math and there was science. The reason we took the kids away from the natives at the time is we wanted to civilize the savage. Now, you can say whatever you want about this. You can say a lot of different things. It's not a good thing. However, by the standard of the 18th century, what else would they do? When civilizations get conquered, the most usual thing that happened is a genocide. Instead of doing genocide, we tried a cultural genocide and to assimilate them. It was done horrifically. There's still trauma going on. It's not to minimize what anyone at the residential schools went through. But the residential schools were schools in some respect. Now, yes, there are human rights abuses, but there also is math and science. Now, there's human rights abuses topped on the math and science. But we are punishing the person who made the math and science and English for the entire country, residential schools and non-residential schools, and pretended that he just wrote down 1 plus 1 equals 2, 2 times 3 equals 6, 6 divided by 2 equals kill all the natives, murder them all, sexual abuse is good. That's not what happened. So you're vilifying the guy who wrote the friggin' math and science textbooks that were then used to teach the kids. It's absolute nonsense, right? But they were allowed to get away with it. And this is why the CBC drove me crazy, because the time they said balance is, they said, they did a whole thing about how it's great. They talked to one student who's like, I've been here since 2017 and I wasn't going to get my degree because I didn't want the name on it. Like, her name, she didn't even seem indigenous. She just seemed some friggin' leftist. They didn't even talk about, I know she wasn't indigenous because they didn't say what nation she was from. Right? If she was indigenous, they would have said what nation she was from. But they just talked to some friggin' random white girl who's like, I didn't want my degree from Ryerson with that name on it. Why? What virtue signaling bullshit is this? I'm going to tear down our history because of this person's goddamn feelings. They mentioned that some historians say that he's mischaracterized, but other people say that it's a good thing that we're finally doing it for the. So that was the only balance he gave us. Some people say they didn't give the microphone. It's your lead freaking story, and it's an objectively false one. You should have been able to have one historian get on there and explain. Here's the counter view. And this is why this can all be diffused within 3 friggin' minutes on the CBC, which is why this is why I rant at the CBC all the time. And I want it destroyed. And this is why people don't watch mainstream media. You're here. Hi, thanks, click, likes, blah, blah, blah. You get it. But in just 3 friggin' minutes, they could give the most insane indigenous activist, just a white lady pretending to be indigenous, they can give her 10 fucking minutes. But if they just give one reasonable person 3 minutes to say, here's what Edgar Ryerson actually did, here's what you're talking about, this is why it's more complicated, this is ridiculous, right? People would see this and go, oh, okay. And then if this was explained to the bunch of spoiled, crazy children who are tearing down the statue, maybe they feel some shame, but they're totally enabled. Radical leftists in their 20s are totally enabled by the current system because our government and our establishment want radical socialists. They want them because they hate us and want to destroy our country. And it pisses me off that the indigenous this is billed as indigenous rights because it's going to create division. Because you can't call the destruction of Canada indigenous rights and not expect some friction between these two groups. And the indigenous community doesn't deserve that. Right? It's not like, I'm not blaming them, but come on. What do you expect? Honestly, what do you expect? To normal, reasonable people who this can be explained to, people have an attention span of 3 minutes and some basic common sense. When you explain what Egerton Ryerson did and all this, how do you expect people not to say, oh, okay, decolonial theory, indigenous rights, all this activism, this is the destruction of Canada, and it's being billed to me as indigenous rights. So when you hear indigenous rights, you're going to be immediately skeptical. And there's actual problems on reserve, right? They don't have clean drinking water. Okay, you know what? As revenge, well, the indigenous community here, but the chief of Aberwascat, we all know she's corrupt. We all know she's corrupt. She's using the $35 million or whatever she gets a year to build friggin' casinos. There you go. Deal with that. No amount of money from the government and the Canadian taxpayer could ever help the Aberwascat with that corrupt chief in there. Right? See where we're pushing us? So it's just absolutely nonsense. I mean, Anyways, do we need a Rosemary Barton score? I just watched the one. I didn't have a lot of time today. I skimmed through and I saw some other stories, but that was the one. I'm like, this is it. This is it. It was a lead story. I'm like, it pissed me off enough. There's no way there could be a worse story than this. And I wasn't going to watch more Ukraine coverage because just Margaret Evans' voice. Ukraine, April 27th. A missile of hate comes from Vladimir Putin. People here don't know how to survive. I talked to a grandma with a limp. And just say what's going on. Annoys me though. So thank you so much for being here. I believe there'll be an episode of TNT Live tomorrow night and Friday. I think we're doing back-to-back ones, TNT Live tomorrow night. It's going to be Wyatt and Richard Rupp tomorrow, I think. They told me because I don't know. I'm busy tomorrow night. And then Wyatt and I will be taken Friday. And then after that, there's a 100% chance the country is saved. Unless you don't show up tomorrow night and the next night, in which case you are the problem. No, it's still Justin Trudeau and the Jagsters. See you tomorrow. Or Friday, technically, for me. But see you tomorrow as the national television.